Hello everyone, I'll be now showing you guys what I've been working on for the past couple of weeks. Basically, it's a landing page where you can access all my projects and see all my socials and what I've been currently working on. Just letting you guys know, this is still not complete. I'm still working on it, and that's why you'll see a few bugs there and there. So first thing first, even just getting it is a bit of a hassle. So you gotta click the screen and then press spacebar, and then it'll load the scene properly. And then in here, you get greeted with three different menus where you can select and it'll load different scenes. So if we click the about, it loads all our socials where we can actually click on them and it'll redirect us to the social. Just like any button in any website, basically. I was trying to make it as a model where it would pop on top of our canvas, like this one, but I was never able to get it to work. So now moving on, one thing to take into consideration is when I release the final product, these are actually going to be the assets of the projects themselves. So it'll actually look way better than just a sphere where you click and then they'll load the Figma file. And from here, you can actually have a look and see what I've been working on. And you can actually access this through the Figma itself if the file takes forever. Sometimes it happens. So yeah, there's that option. Moving on to the next section. We have the sandbox. As you can see how my cursor is over here, you actually have to center it to the middle. That's one of the other bugs, you know. And then moving on to the sandbox. So in the sandbox, I just display currently a list of my NFTs I currently own. And then I've also created using an online tool to create a like 3D type of version of this one. And once you can click on one of these buttons and it'll redirect you to the model showing you the website of the NFT. And lastly, because this is a sandbox, I want to make it more like interactive. I've enabled draggability features. So in the future, expect that you'll be able to drag these stuff everywhere and whatnot. So yeah, that sums up what we currently have in our website. I know it doesn't seem like much, but let's now have a look at our code. Okay, so here is our project. So the first thing to go into is the app.js. So this is where every app gets started in React. And in here, we have it really simple. We just added two components. So we previously discussed in the first block. I'm just adding from what we currently have. So we also added a model. So in the model, it allows us to render those components once we click on them, right? So in our model, the way we are making sure you have the proper data is by having a use effect, but we have two, right? So the first one only gets called the first time it ever gets created. And it ensures that our model data turns to null so that it does not break the application if the project does not have anything and tries to assign stuff. And then in this one, it checks every so often when it gets this data, checks, and then assigns it if found. If I would have to say this is probably not the best way to implement this, I would probably find and use reference from React to implement this in the future, but this works for the time being. And then the rest of it is basically we just have an iframe loading the URL of our file, basically. And that's how we get our model loaded in. And then the other component part to our model, let's go have a look at that in our viewer. Let me have a look and find that for you guys. The only other thing we do regarding the model is we toggle it right here. So every time we click an element, this gets triggered. We toggle the data, so we pass in the URL and the title to this, and then it gets assigned to the local storage model data, and it also exits our cursor so that we have a smooth experience. The rest of the application is basically done through our viewer. In our viewer, I have a lot of comments. So this is all codes from experiments I've run. But basically, we have all the previous code we had in the previous video, and we just adding onto it. I know this is probably not the best way to create a project, but I just went this way. I just wanted to focus more on the Babylon and just code with it, then focus on structuring my React project. So we also added the box. So that's the box component for the sandbox. So the sandbox, this is created using the gizmo. So if we have a look at the gizmo, to ensure we are not picking up everything, we have to create a gizmo, and we can assign specific types of modification you want to do to it. So like there's the rotation, which is this one, the positioning, this one. You get the concept. So yeah, you have to assign it so that it understands that you're picking it. And then also, once you click on stuff, we double check that you're picking meshes that are actually available to be picked. And that's when the gizmo components appear. Going back, we now create the logo. So this is actually created the Charles Breton and this checker box. So the checker box is used to create different view camera angles. It's not a finished product, so it does not work properly. I can show you guys, it will crash the application basically. So if you do a Control X, it'll enable it, as you can see. And the concept was going to be that you'd be in a 3D space in the same sense as, let me pull it up for you guys, this. So it would be a 3D space where you could explore the scene around. But I never got the time or never figured it out properly, so it never got done. So that was the concept behind this. And yeah, so this basically creates that. So as you can see, this part does the Charles Breton, and then this part is responsible for the checkbox. And we also add a register clipboard event. So we're actually utilizing the Control X feature of cut to implement this feature, which was pretty neat if you ask me. And then we just have the toggle. So in here, in the create cards, we are creating these components, right? So we have actually two sets of components for the different types. So you have the first set with the matrix, where it covers the whole frame, and this other one that's more generic template. So it goes, the first set is generating a matrix, and then the second set is in charge of the templates, the generic templates. And basically how they're created is we create a mesh for the assets to lay on, and then we create a plane, so there's just film on top, and then we create an advanced texture. This helps us to render 2D GUIs. So we're basically using this, but on a panel. And then we are creating our images, our button, and assigning the functionality to our buttons. And we are able to create this panel. And then lastly, we just move it down below just so that in the initial render, we don't see anything. Same thing for this. This is the same exact as just for the other panel, this one. Moving on, in here, we now start to see the data we use to actually populate these. So how it works is we store it into a list, and we call this feature and assign that to our holder of all our NFT cards. And inside this function, we just go through the cycle of going through the panels of creating all cards. And then for right now, this is just to make it simple. We're just going through the first two, and then the rest of them are going to get called as template. This is going to get changed down the line, but this is just simple implementation for now. And then over here, this is how we create the project sphere. So this could literally be anything else. The only thing we are taking into consideration for this is just the name we are calling it. So right here, we're able to just, this is our event listener for all our clicks in our scenes. So this is able to register that we are actually picking the result, the mesh, the name is actually the sphere, and that's how it's able to toggle the specific one we want. And then right here, we have it for the socials. Because the socials are actually a bit different, that they don't use the model, we had to go with the window.open. That just made it so that it would redirect you to a new tab. And we are using this data set. So the data for the different views, so this is for the model, and this is to load the actual assets in here. Moving on, this is where we actually import our meshes in our world. So the matrix NFT and all these buttons, this is where we import them. So basically these are all async functions so that they don't take this, they are just rendered in the background, and once they're loaded, they'll just appear in our scene. This just causes way less resources when loading initial page. And so it's really simple. So first thing, we're grabbing all our meshes. The first one is the component. For some reason with this specific mesh, it was not working properly. So it was a lot of trial and error to get this working. And we're also assigning it a name so we're able to click on it later on. We are positioning in the world and scaling it properly. We're rotating it, all that fun stuff, and then assigning it materials so that the background is black and the front is white. These assets are not actually this color. For some reason in the imports, it just deleted all the colors, but final product looks pretty good to me, so I kept it that way. And then we just do the same thing over and over for all these assets until the loop. This would be able to be in a smaller function that just renders them all. But the only issue is because they have different position scaling and different properties. Like for this one, YouTube has actually 3 mesh we're taking into consideration. So they're not actually all the same. We can't actually just do one. It would be possible. It would just be time consuming. And I didn't want to spend my time doing that. Moving on, we're now finally at the creating the panel. So we're just creating a simple panel mesh builder. And then we're assigning a 3D manager and then creating a panel, pretty simple. And then over here, so once we click the buttons, we ensure that we clear the scene first because we're not actually creating new scenes every single time because that would just recreate the scene. So to make the illusion that we're changing scene, we are clearing the scene. So we're removing everything by placing everything down 10. So everything's down below over here. And once you click on the category, it pops into view. So you have the different sections. If it's sandbox, clear the meshes first, and then you display what you need to display. Same thing and same thing. And that is basically it. We just have a little reticle, so that just makes the reticle, and the start button is the component to create the screen. Nothing crazy, pretty simple. Yeah, and that's basically how I created this. There you have it. This is my project. Hopefully you understood something from that, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take care.